Biden is expected to kick off his term with a flurry of executive orders. According to a memo from incoming White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, Biden is planning to sign about a dozen executive orders shortly after moving into the White House on Wednesday. I want to bring in CNN's Arlette Saenz covering the Biden transition in Wilmington, Delaware. Arlette, what can you tell us about Biden's plans?
Well, Anna, President-elect Biden is readying dozens of executive actions so he can get right to work after his inauguration on January 20th. And many of these executive actions build on promises that Biden made during the presidential campaign. And on the very first day, on January 20th, he's expected to sign about a dozen executive actions. And I want to run you through some of those items he is expected to address. Now, some of these executive actions are aimed at undoing some of the policies of the Trump administration. And that starts with rescinding the ban on travelers from Muslim-majority countries. You'll remember that was rolled out in the early days of the Trump administration, and Biden will be signing an executive action to undo that. Now, another step that Biden plans to do is rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. That was something that was negotiated and entered during the Obama-Biden administration, but President Trump pulled out of it. So that will be something that the U.S. will go back into once he signs this executive action. There are also some items relating to the pandemic that Biden plans to continue, and that's halting evictions and foreclosures, as well as keeping that pause on student loan payments and interest during the pandemic. And then Biden also is going to be issuing what they're calling a 100-day masking challenge, where they're going to encourage people to wear masks. Now, Biden does not have the ability to require masks everywhere, but he can require it in federal buildings and interstate travel. So that is something that he will do via an executive action on that first day that he's in office. And this also just builds on the other items that Biden wants to address through legislative priorities. He's going to send an immigration bill to Congress in his first 100 days. And you'll remember he also rolled out that $1.9 trillion COVID stimulus package. That's something that he's hoping Congress can get to work on right away. But what the president-elect is trying to do here is show that he's ready to hit the ground running as soon as his inauguration happens on January 20th. Anna?
There are obviously huge problems the country is facing. Arlette Saenz, thank you. The CDC is now warning new, more contagious variants of COVID-19 will likely accelerate the spread of the virus. This warning comes as we learn that those reserve vaccine doses that the Trump administration said it would release, they've already been distributed. There is no reserve. President-elect Biden is still vowing 100 million doses of the vaccine in his first 100 days, a very ambitious goal. With us now to discuss is Dr. Celine Gounder, a member of the Biden Transition COVID-19 Advisory Board. Dr. Gounder, what is your reaction first to this new warning from the CDC about the pandemic worsening with new variants?
Look, this is exactly why we need to accelerate the pace at which we are vaccinating, but also it's really important to remember that the very interventions that we have been recommending over the last, well, almost a year now, the masking, the social distancing, being outdoors instead of indoors, or if you are indoors in a well-ventilated space, all of those things still work against these new variants. So we really do need to double down on all of those measures until we can get the vast majority of Americans vaccinated.
And yet things are still getting worse. They aren't getting better, even with us all knowing those mitigation measures. More than 395,000 Americans have now died of COVID-19 in less than a year. In fact, in just the past couple of weeks, the first 2 weeks of 2021, more than 42,000 reported coronavirus deaths, the deadliest 2 weeks of the entire pandemic. The U.S. reported more than 3,200 deaths just yesterday. So at this rate, the U.S. coronavirus death toll may reach 400,000 before Biden is sworn in on Wednesday. And now we're learning that the reserves of the vaccine the Trump administration announced it was releasing have already been distributed. Did you know that when this announcement was made the past week that they were going to, release these reserves? And what is your reaction?
I think this is just further evidence that the Trump administration had no plan for distribution. Operation Warp Speed was really just a plan to address market failures in manufacturing and development and manufacturing of vaccines. It was not a plan for distribution. The president-elect remains very committed to getting 100 million shots into people's arms in the first 100 days, because now with 4,000 people dying from coronavirus a day, if we wait 100 days at that rate, you're going to see the death toll across this country more than double.
But only 12 million shots have been administered in the past month and a half. And I get that there will be a transition of the way you go about this when Biden takes office. But when you say 100 million shots in his first 100 days, how exactly will he do that?
So the name of the game here is partnership. So you're going to see partnership with local pharmacies, with federally qualified health centers and local primary care doctors, with state and local health departments, as well as territorial and tribal health departments. So it's really about working hand in hand, not dictating from the top down, but going out to all of those partners and saying, hey, how can we help you? What resources, what funding do you need? What staffing do you need? We're going to see things like community vaccination centers, especially in some of the hardest hit, most vulnerable communities. We're going to see mobile vaccination units, and we're going to draw upon all kinds of national resources, including FEMA and the National Guard.
We can all appreciate that plan, but obviously it takes resources. It takes a lot more money than states have, than Congress has provided so far for the effort. And also, we were just talking about the supply-demand issue, right, when it comes to the production and distribution of the coronavirus vaccine. If there aren't enough doses of the vaccine available to meet that goal, Americans have experienced overpromising at nearly every turn of this pandemic in the Trump administration. Is there a risk of that here with vaccines?
Based on our conversations with multiple stakeholders, including the pharmaceutical companies that are manufacturing these vaccines, we do think that 100 million doses in 100 days is still a reasonable goal. But as you mentioned, this is really going to require a massive infusion of funding into state and local health departments, which is precisely what the America Rescue Plan, $1.9 trillion, is attempting to do. And that might sound like a lot of money, but we're projected to lose, the American economy is projected to lose about $16 trillion to the coronavirus pandemic. So that's really a drop in the bucket and well worth that investment.
Dr. Celine Gounder, as always, good to have you with us. Thank you.